Welcome back, writers. Have you ever heard someone say that it's easy to miss the forest for the trees? Well, I grew up loving fantasy and becoming absolutely engulfed in the mystical worlds these stories took place in. So much so that I never really took a step back and thought about what makes these stories work and what makes fantasy worlds so compelling. And as a lover of all things fantasy, one thing has really piqued my interest as I've become absolutely absorbed in this new medium for fantasy and anime. And that's the inescapable intrigue I feel when I'm watching a fantasy story that's got like a massive fucking tree in it. You know what kind of trees I'm talking about, and hey, maybe you're thinking to yourself, the only tree-related interests I've got are smoking some fat trees with the boys.
Weed is tight. Weed is tight. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Weed is awesome.
But give me a second, because I'm going to show you that the importance of these massive trees in your life is way bigger than whatever Arbor Day extracurriculars you've got going on. So without further ado, let's get to the root of these giant roots and talk about giant trees in fantasy and anime. For some obligatory context, because as we all know, context is everything, the significance of giant trees as symbolic entities dates back to ancient cultures and religions. This is kind of something we've been doing for a while. And honestly, it makes sense because if you've ever been in the presence of these giant trees, and I'm not talking like a tree in your backyard, I'm talking like a massive, massive fucking tree. I'm talking like a redwood or whatever version of redwoods exist elsewhere in the world, you do really get this feeling of awe and mystery and even fear just being in the presence of these giant arboreal beasts. I mean, the size of these trees, the scale of it is really off-putting, but in a way that connects you with not only the trees, but nature itself. There's something powerful about trees that are the size of skyscrapers. And trees, giant and regular alike, have garnered sacred status throughout history. They've held profound spiritual and cosmic significance, from Yggdrasil in Norse mythology to the Bodhi tree where Siddhartha attained enlightenment.
Sick reference though, bro.
Oh, thanks, bud.
Dude, your references are out of control. Everyone knows that.
Hey,
dude.
thanks, man.
And for so many people, for generations, these colossal canopies have represented the axis mundi, you know, the connection between heaven and earth and the underworld. So in mirroring the importance of trees in history and mysticism, as literature has evolved, so has the portrayal of trees as these massive and powerful symbols. In what's become Western fantasy's like guidebook, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings really petrified this archetype of the mystical tree, and it was also my favorite series growing up. Anyone who's watched the movies knows of the White Tree of Gondor, but it's so much deeper than that. The two trees Telperion and Laurelin gave light to Valinor in the beginning of what we know as Middle-earth. And in Tolkien's stories, beyond just the Lord of the Rings, we see this really take birth, this structure of mystical, massive trees that play both physical and representative roles in the narrative. And in doing research for this video, there are just so many instances of giant trees having this like mystical and very important role in stories, and I personally think that Tolkien would love that his fondness for trees has had almost as big of an impact on the genre and the history of fantasy as the series that he created itself has. Because in a 1955 letter to his publisher, Tolkien wrote, "I am much in love with plants, and above all trees, and always have been. And I find human mistreatment of them as hard to bear as some find ill treatment of animals." And that seed that Tolkien planted, you know, the seed of the reverence and importance of massive fucking trees, is sprouted not just in the world of Western fantasy, but in Japanese culture as well. The reverence paid to not just nature, but specifically forests and trees is showcased in some of the most well-known Japanese media in the US, the Studio Ghibli films. Specifically, I think Princess Mononoke does a beautiful job portraying this, the reverence and love and fear in its depiction for the forest spirit who protects the cedar forest. But I know that reverence to nature and a spirit who protects a forest isn't what you're here for. You're here for the biggest, baddest, most spiritualiest trees in all of media. And I promise you, we're getting at the trees. Because honestly, when you start really looking, these things are friggin' everywhere. Because beyond just anime, the influence of massive trees is front and center in Japanese video games, particularly in The Legend of Zelda. Serving as a guide and guardian for Link, the Great Deku Tree appears in so many of the Zelda titles. Because no matter the path that I take to end up in front of the Great Deku Tree when I'm playing a Zelda game, I've always been super entranced by the ambiance of the Korok Forest and the imposing yet super benevolent presence of the Great Deku Tree, and the way that it signifies this connection between the mystical and earthly realms in Hyrule. But the Great Deku Tree definitely isn't alone in representation of trees in Japanese video games, and it's not completely irrelevant, but I wanted to take a second and shout out Wispy Woods from the Kirby series real quick, because honestly, I just love Kirby and I don't really get to talk about him that much. But honestly, Wispy's not a giant magical or mystical tree. He's kind of more of a goofball tree, if I had to label him. Like, he's kind of a goof head. And obviously from the structure of this video, as I explored all these examples, including examples I really don't even have time to mention here, it became so evident that the theme of massive trees completely transcends the boundaries of any specific genre, but the meaning and the significance they have in a story is pretty consistent. And in anime, there are so many examples of these massive trees, and I'm not going to take the time to just go through and list every single one, but for anyone who's a ultra absorbed arborist out there, I'll give you a few that you could go watch. So there's the World Spiral Tree in Berserk, which is a series I definitely recommend reading if you haven't yet, although be warned that it can get a bit brutal. There's the Great Porta Tree in Made in the Abyss, which is interesting because it's like a base built within a tree. I think it's a super interesting take on this concept of massive trees. Also a series I recommend, but can be a bit brutal. In Sword Art Online, there are a few examples of massive trees. I think in the later season, Gigas Cedar and kind of the role it plays in the narrative is super interesting. I can't in good conscience recommend Sword Art Online. It can be entertaining, but I'm not going to stump for it. And what's probably my favorite example of massive trees that I'm not going to talk about in depth here is the Banyan Grove tree in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not only is Avatar: The Last Airbender an incredible series you should watch, and does a really good job of connecting with themes like the relationship between humans and nature, but this example of the Banyan Grove tree really showcases the value of giant trees playing a connective role in narratives between humans and their relationship with the world around them. And so to dive a little deeper into how this applies to anime, I want to discuss the massive trees that are present in two of my favorite series and how they function within their stories. For anyone who's watched any of my previous videos, this probably isn't going to come as a surprise, but in One Piece and Hunter x Hunter, we're introduced to massive trees and then told they're not the only ones of their kind. In One Piece, we learn about three massive trees: the Tree of Knowledge, the Sunlight Tree Eve, and the yet unseen Adam Tree. And this triumvirate of trees is so intriguing because even though we know so little about them, still they serve this massive function of connection within the narrative. The Tree of Knowledge contained the now burned library of Ohara and was really the world's greatest source of information. And from Clover's reveal that he had figured out the name of the ancient kingdom, it really serves as a connection between the modern One Piece world that we know and the forbidden history that the world government wants to hide. The Sunlight Tree Eve brings light to Fishman Island through its roots that sit atop the Sabayori archipelago. And beyond all the potential theories around Eve's connection to Mary Joie and the significance it might play in the story, it's already played this crucial symbolic role providing life to the scorned race of fishmen that live underneath the home of the celestial dragons. And lastly, we know very little about the Adam Tree, and I'm not going to use this video to talk about all of my theories on what its role is going to be, but we do know that its wood was built to use the Thousand Sunny, and it will end up connecting our Straw Hats with their goals and all the things that they want to achieve. Those three trees play massive roles in One Piece's story, and they'll likely be more massive than the trees themselves are, because we don't really even know the full extent of the impact these trees are going to have on the narrative. And Hunter x Hunter similarly introduces a massive fucking tree and then tells you it's not the only one of its kind in what's probably my favorite example of big bark as a world-building mechanism. Mind you, this is one of the last scenes in Hunter x Hunter's anime, so do with that what you will. But when Gon climbs the World Tree after his near-death experience just to talk to his dad, Jing tells him that the tree they're sitting on, the biggest tree in the world is actually just a sapling. He tells Gon that the world could be covered in the fully grown relatives of this tree, but they exist in the unknown world, beyond the bounds of the world we've known that the entire story has taken place in. And in that moment, both the viewer and Gon learn something. We learn that this journey, the entire 148 episodes, which introduced us to dozens of the most unique powers and terrifyingly overpowered antagonists, is merely just a speck on the map of the world where the story takes place. And just like massive trees in real life, for me, this elicited feelings of awe and mystery and fear, but not just that, it continued to set the same tone that the entire series of Hunter x Hunter had. Because when you understand Hunter x Hunter, you know that we're not watching a traditional story, some story where the hero is going to conquer the villain or a young, good-hearted protagonist is going to accomplish their goal. The world tree sapling that they sit atop, with its colossal branches stretching towards the sky, yet only a fraction of what it could and should be, it invites characters and viewers alike to think about the mysteries that exist beyond the familiar world we've come to know. And the world tree, this massive, underdeveloped tree, sprouts questions like, how big should it be really? And how did it get planted where it is? And most importantly to me, if there are so many of these trees in the world, what else is out there? And it could get you thinking that the roles trees play in these narratives, I mean, they're not a monolith, right? The world tree doesn't connect the world of Hunter x Hunter to the heavens or the underworld, but it connects the viewers and the characters to this sense of mystery and curiosity that, to me, is really the glory of this anime. I mean, that's what Hunter x Hunter is about. And then in usual Togashi fashion, the tree serves as this incredible precursor to the next arc, where we abandon our lovable young protagonist and venture into the world of the unknown on the Dark Continent. The World Tree captures this essence of curiosity and discovery, embodying the series' themes of pushing boundaries and questioning the nature of existence. And directly in the narrative, it serves as a literal and symbolic meeting place for both Gon and the viewers of Jing's desires. Gon meets his dad, and we meet the spirit of a true hunter. A hunter who hopefully will go on to hunt the greatest mysteries in his world. This recurring theme of massive trees in anime and all of fantasy is steeped in symbolism. You know, each colossal entity representing a unique facet of life and growth and balance in their respective stories. The size or age of these trees can symbolize the essence of life, or perhaps connect the characters with some broader, timeless themes. And in many cases, these massive trees can act as metaphors for the cyclical nature of life and death. The growth of these trees may mirror the growth and evolution of characters within their story. Or conversely, destruction of these trees can signify impending challenges for the characters or threats the characters will face. This cycle of life and death resonates, not only because these cycles parallel the same themes that draw us to narratives in the first place, but also because these themes resonate with who we are as living and breathing creatures. Because trees have been an important symbol for humans since the dawn of our species, and more than just being an important symbol, trees and nature in general are synonymous with our lives and our existence on Earth. So today I'm actually gonna leave you with a quote as I urge you to find some time to go outside and of course touch grass, but maybe even sit with a tree, because you might feel the same feeling Tolkien wrote when Frodo first touched a Malorn tree in Lorien. He felt a delight in the wood and the touch of it, neither as forester nor carpenter. It was the delight of the living tree itself. We like trees, and we're tree guys. We're tree guys. Okay, you can get down. God damn it. We're tree guys, but we got the zoomies. All right, that's good. I think we got it. If we didn't get it, fucking sucks to suck.